whether you got in as a social worker or a PhD or a psychiatric nurse practitioner, you got into mental health because you wanted to help people. I love that. It's wonderful. It's exactly what I want, right? And you probably align really well with the belief that mental health is a right and it should be accessible. Unfortunately, I think there is a lot of people who are taking a theoretical approach to something that is very, very real. So I put a post up on my page today and I said, very simply, if you are willing to sacrifice yourself for your clients, who will they have left once you're done? If you sacrifice yourself for your clients, who are you leaving them with? Because if you fall on your sword, you will not be able to provide care for your clients. Multiple people who have gotten in my comments and said they just don't believe in raising rates. They don't believe in prioritizing profits. They don't believe that you can be a cash pay practice and be ethically sound. They are committed no matter what to continuing to accept Medicaid, continuing to accept insurance, and not diversifying their revenue. They believe wholeheartedly that the maintaining of access to clients comes when you prioritize clients who do not have the financial means to provide their own adequate care. And because they believe that so wholeheartedly, they are not paying attention to any of the math that goes into running a successful business. And what I need people to understand is that ignorance of the math required to be a profitable business is not going to save your clients. And in fact, there's a good chance that not understanding what it means to run a successful business, still thinking that you earning more money harms your clients, those things are actually counterproductive and they're going to hurt your clients. Because here is the reality that's happening right now. In my inbox might be somebody who is saying, I couldn't pay myself last month or I had to cut my pay last month because I didn't have enough revenue coming in for whatever reason. So their household is suffering because they're trying to remain accessible to their clients. In my inbox is somebody who's saying, I couldn't pay my medical insurance. I'm having to choose between my medical insurance and the rent on my suite because I don't have enough for both. I have people who are having to close their practices down because they don't have enough revenue. I have therapists who are currently embroiled in litigation and negotiation with insurance companies who are demanding 5, 6, and 7-figure clawbacks. I have therapists that I have seen who are saying they haven't been paid in 30 days because their practice owner is in the middle of an audit and they don't have any revenue coming in. When we put all of our eggs in the basket of the insurance companies, whether they be private or Medicaid and Medicare, we are putting our practices and our livelihoods at risk. If you have to choose between keeping your practice open and paying for your health care, and you get sick and you can't work, your practice is going to close anyway. And I really think that the conversation, we need to take the limits off of what we believe. We need to start to expand our perception of what's possible so that we can have a better conversation about what this can actually look like. I don't want people to think that the conversation about therapists making more money is just about therapists making more money. That's enough. If it was, that's plenty, right? Because you have a right to go to school, get a master's degree, take on these student loans, and pay them student loans back because ain't nobody trying to waive them anymore. If you are going to do that, you have a right to have a livable wage. Period. Full stop. The end. But we also need to understand that this isn't just about the therapist making more money. It's also about how we can maintain access for everyone. Because if we expect the helpers and the healers to suffer while they are serving, eventually they will burn out. I think we have to stop wasting our time and our energy arguing about whether or not it is ethical to stop accepting insurance or to raise your rates or to go cash pay. That conversation is dead. That conversation is over. You're not saving them if you can't keep the lights on. You're not saving them if you get in trouble with workforce development because you can't pay your employees. You're not saving them if you get in trouble with the IRS because you can't pay your taxes. You're not saving them if you get evicted from your suite because you can't pay your rent. You're not saving them if you focus all of your energy on how can I give everybody a sliding scale and not keep the lights on. You're not saving anyone. So you think you are because that's the way you've been conditioned. But here's what's actually happening in the industry. Payers have already started walking away from Medicaid. In most states, Medicare is administrated by private insurance companies. So you've got like MDYs, CareSource, Anthem Blue Cross. These different payers have started to walk away because the contracts with Medicaid aren't good enough anymore. We already know what the federal government is doing regarding Medicaid. So there are going to be less and less people who are even eligible for Medicaid, probably for at least the next 2 to 3 years, maybe longer than that, depending on what happens in midterms, right? And what kind of changes are allowed to go through. There are going to be less and less people who are even eligible for Medicaid, and there's less companies that are going to be willing to take on these contracts. And so what ends up happening is, and it's already started to happen, in some of the states are funneling people on Medicaid directly to the VC platforms. So if you have a independent private practice and you are in network with Medicaid, your state could decide that they're no longer going to contract with some of these other insurance companies, or the insurance company could go belly up, because as consolidation happens, it doesn't just hurt the therapist, it actually hurts all of us, right? So as the insurance companies force consolidation, which I've talked about a lot, as more and more consolidation happens, smaller insurance companies can't compete. So right now there's about 11, 12 insurance companies that are the top insurance companies. They have enough of the market share that they're the largest. They are looking to do more and more consolidation and control more and more states. And part of why they are doing that is by squeezing out some of the smaller insurance companies. So as they squeeze out some of the smaller insurance companies, those companies are going bankrupt, and other ones are choosing to eliminate contracts that are not lucrative enough for them to stay. So what you have is some people who are going to lose access to coverage because they're no longer qualified, and other people that will lose access to coverage because that coverage is being offered only through the VCs. And so if you are an independent private practice or community mental health center that has been dependent upon Medicaid, what are you going to do if you lose that contract? So I'm in the state of Indiana, and there are already mental health centers that are talking about the fact that they have been essentially exited from certain contracts that they did, and to their knowledge, they didn't do anything wrong, but they're just being like voluntarily removed from these rosters. And so those patients still get to get care, but they are told this is the person that is in network. And the person that's in network might be, Talkspace or BetterHelp or whatever, and not, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith's counseling practice. That can happen in any state at any time. So when we start to talk about diversifying your revenue, it's not just because I want you to make more money. It's also because I believe that to be the only way for you to protect your private practice. We already know that reimbursement rates are shrinking, that they are downgrading codes, eliminating codes, making it harder for you to be reimbursed for the services that you are already doing, because the tech boys, the tech bros, the VCs, the telehealth platforms are doing so much work to track what they believe are the outcomes that are possible. They're going to be able to say, okay, it only takes 22 sessions to get anxiety stable. So at the 22 session mark, they can cut you off. Now, you might be able to say, hey, I've got all these medical records that prove that my client is not stable and they need more care. But what happens if they have 30 days to answer your appeal. Do you keep seeing the client during those 30 days and not getting paid? If you're a group practice owner, do you keep having your staff see the client and then you got to figure out how to pay them? What is your practice going to do if you're 100% dependent upon insurance companies, whether they be private pay or Medicare or Medicaid, if they suddenly don't pay? Most people are not having that conversation. They are not thinking about this, and it is incredibly dangerous for the private practice landscape. What I suggest for therapists is that they create a diversified revenue model that allows you to generate income in multiple ways. You can still continue to accept insurance, but because you are bringing in revenue in different ways, you're not fully dependent on any one insurance company or any one particular payer, which means that if somebody was to give you like a 30-day lapse, it might be a little tighter, but you could still survive. Now, starting next week, next Monday, I am hosting the More Money, Less Grind Sprint, where I'm going to teach you how to create one of these type of revenue models for your business, for your career. If you do not have a way to get paid in your practice outside of insurance, sign up for this sprint, because everyone needs to have at least one way outside of insurance that you can get paid. And for most of you, that's going to be also outside of one-to-one, which is a good thing for you because you can make more money with less grind. So I am the director of operations for a group practice here in Indiana, and we have been in business for over 16 years. About 7, 8 years ago, we started to look at how we could make sure that the practice was good and stable. I had a CEO who said she wanted to close her clinical caseload. We needed to make sure she could still get a paycheck. So she needed to replace about 25 to 27 sessions that she was doing. So we did expand and started to hire more people to be able to meet the demand of the community. But we also needed to make sure that the profit margin was high enough so that we could pay her, even though she did not have a weekly caseload. So we started to look at what can we do. At the same time, we realized that in our practice, we also realized at that time that we had about 70 to 80% of our revenue coming from one insurance company. In the state that I'm in, we have one insurance company that has the lion's share of the entire state. And so we had one insurance company that represented about 70 to 80% of our revenue. That is so risky because if we were to lose that revenue, right? If we were to lose that 70 to 80% of our revenue for 30 days, for 60 days, for 90 days, for indefinitely, what would we then do? It would be, could be catastrophic. We could go bankrupt easily. So we said, okay, what do we need to do that will meet both of those needs, right? That diversifies our revenue so we're not completely dependent on this one insurance company, that brings in a higher profit margin, because in case you didn't know it, the insurance companies do not care about your profit. Let me just put a little pin in that for a second. I need you to understand that the insurance companies do not care about whether or not you're profitable, and most clinicians are not. It's important to understand that most therapists have good revenue coming in. They might be bringing in 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30 or 40,000. I see, group practices bringing in all the time, right? However, they are not, in fact, incredibly profitable. The money that comes in goes right back out, which means at the end of the month, you maybe have 1,000, maybe a couple thousand if you're lucky, left in the bank. Some people not even that much. Some people got money coming in and more money going out. So you really, you're just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul every month, because the margins on insurance is slim and the margins on EAP sessions is non-existent. If you have a practice that is 50% or more EAP sessions, there is a good chance that you are not profitable, especially if you want to pay yourself at least $50 an hour. Unless you have pretty much no overhead at all, you are probably breaking even, which is why you're constantly having to do too many sessions in a week. Those rates will keep you overworking and will never get you to the pace where you are living a limitless life as a therapist. So we started looking at how we could offer corporate consulting, speaking engagements, digital products, workshops, and events. And over the years, we have signed 4, 5, and 6-figure contracts. that have been at 50% or more profit, right? So imagine you have a six-figure contract and it's a 50% profit margin. That's good, right? So that will help you cover somebody's salary even though they don't have a full caseload. But those kind of numbers only happen if you prioritize adding in a revenue stream that's not dependent upon an insurance company. The great thing about each and every one of these contracts that we have done, and this is the part that I am so, so proud of, not only has it been a high profit margin for the practice, which means that we are super stable and able to pay our employees well, it also gives equitable access to clients who don't even have to pay for the services. The important part for you to remember is that this is not just about raising your rates. That's typically what we talk about. They get very turned off about raising your rates. This is about you diversifying your payers because sometimes your clients don't need a one-on-one session. Sometimes they need something else. Sometimes they need community. Sometimes they need connection. Sometimes they need support. They need reinforcement. They need psychoeducation. If you become the source for that, rather than having them get that information and that support elsewhere, you're actually serving them more completely. If the federal government is changing the way that they dictate how Medicaid is delivered, okay? If the states are changing the way in which they administrate Medicaid, right? So Medicare is being changed, Medicaid is being changed, and smaller insurance companies are being bankrupt. And the larger insurance companies really want to consolidate and prevent you from even having access to an independent private practice at all. The risks are all around. If you are 100% dependent upon insurance right now, that is a risk. So I really want you to join the More Money, Less Grind sprint so that you can create at least one revenue stream that is not dependent upon the insurance companies or the platforms. Some of the states are already enacting legislation that will protect access to mental health care and that will continue to generate support for people who need mental health care. Some of the states don't have that. And some of the states don't want to do that. So it really depends on the state that you're in, but I do believe this will affect all states, but some states will get affected more, I would say harshly than others. When you diversify your revenue, you don't stop doing one-to-one sessions necessarily. You don't necessarily end your relationships with the insurance companies. You just start to spread your service delivery model into other directions. I'm talking about strategically creating relationships with corporations, nonprofits, school districts, churches, hospitals, you name it, that are actually interested in supporting the exact same clients that you are. Creating relationships with them that can be mutually beneficial for you, for them, and for your clients, and offering a variety of services that meet the needs. Choosing this type of model does not eliminate access for your clients. It actually can create more access for your clients. And the practices that do this now are the ones that will be able to survive no matter what happens. I can't guarantee what's going to happen in the future, but the writing is on the wall for what this is going to mean for private practice owners. It is more likely than not that it will continue to be harder to access mental health care through the existing channels of private and public insurance policies for at least the foreseeable future. The question is, how long could your practice survive without your number one payer? If your number one payer stopped paying their bills, if they said, we are pausing your reimbursements for the next 30 days so we can audit you, if they said, we no longer want to be in contract with you, we have too many providers in your area, we're terminating your contract effective July 30th, how long could you actually stay in business? 7 days? 30 days? What do you think it would be? For most people, it will start to get sticky around the 30-day mark. I know of at least 2 therapists who are on social media who are currently involved in negotiations with insurance companies that are demanding a 6-figure clawback. I don't know if you're familiar with a clawback, but what happens in a clawback is you get audited. The insurance company looks at all your clients' records. They demand those records from you. And then they will pause all of your payments for 30 days. And then they will review all of your records and determine whether or not you had actual medical necessity for every session. You'll either pass or you'll fail, and they'll say 20% of your claims for the last 12 months were not medically necessary. So they don't just take it back from that one client. They take back every single client that you billed during that period of time. So I want you to think about who you bill insurance for right now. I want you to think about that. So if you have, let's say you have United Healthcare, right? And when you think about how many of your clients are on United Healthcare, maybe you have Cigna or Anthem or whatever. So if they paid you $50,000 over the course of the year, they can demand $10,000 back from you within 30 days. Do you have $10,000 sitting in the bank? That is what is happening right now in 2026. So a private practice that only has 10% profit, maybe 20% profit, if you have to turn around and give them 20% back, you're no longer profitable. How are you paying your estimated taxes? How are you paying your liability insurance? How are you paying your rent? So when I say that diversifying your revenue isn't just good for you, this is what I mean. I want you to be prepared. And while we are still having this theoretical, ethical conversation about whether or not we should raise our rates, all of the VCs have an entire team of MBAs telling them how they can play with this system. They have an entire team of lawyers and lobbyists that are trying to jimmy rig the system. So while you are continuing to have this argument with yourself because you feel guilty about raising your rates, about getting off that panel that hasn't paid you well, about getting off that panel that has, like, instead of a 30-day reimbursement, they're actually like closer to 90 days, while you are feeling guilty about whether or not you should make that decision, whether or not you should bill a no-show fee, whether or not you should bill a cancellation fee. While you are feeling guilty about that, they are out here moving and shaking. This is the path to not only abundance for therapists, economic liberation for therapists, but survival for therapists. This is why I have created the More Money, Less Grind Sprint. Because for most private practice owners, for most therapists who are even just getting started in private practice, or who maybe have a part-time private practice and a full-time job, for most of these therapists, one contract can give you so much stability. The most important part to remember is the demand for mental health services is higher than ever. People want mental health services. They want a high quality of life. They want better relationships with their spouses and their children and their mothers and their sisters. People still want this, but you might have to just get more creative about how you deliver it. The mental health needs of the American people have never been higher than they are right now. The stigma associated with it has never been lower. So there is no shortage of demand. It's just going to matter how you deliver the services. When I say diversify, you don't have to necessarily give up the insurance companies at all, but you need to make sure that that's only a portion. And if you don't have at least one offer actively selling right now that is either a high ticket offer or a cash pay offer, something that is not dependent upon the insurance companies, I want you to sign up for the sprint. Now, let's say, for example, you have a lot of clients who are on Medicaid. And so you're saying, right now, I don't have a lot of cash pay clients. I do want to continue working with Medicaid, but I want to start to build something out that will help my clients if Medicaid was to go away, but also supplement them. So maybe you start thinking about what kind of additional support your clients need. Maybe you work with a lot of teenagers who are on the autism spectrum and they're dealing with social issues. And you've never run a group before because you're not sure that you can actually sustain it. You partner with a local ABA center and they contract you to offer a support group for social skills. And you get to offer that to your existing clients. The ABA Center, maybe they sponsor it for, $1,000 a month or whatever the case may be. And now you get to offer that for free to your clients. So maybe you have a client who can only come twice a month because that's what their authorization is for. But now you can supplement that with this group that's being sponsored by, the ABA Center or the local pediatrician's office or the local church or the local community center, right? Right now, I have a client who got an entire grief group sponsored by a community center. So she gets to offer a grief group for free to her community because it was sponsored by a community center. Those are exactly the kind of things that you can do when you have an offer that is diversified and not dependent upon any one insurance company. This is about being proactive without excluding anyone. Right? In fact, it might make you more inclusive, or at the very least, allow you to serve more comprehensively. I saw a comment and somebody was saying, I really want to do this, but is this really possible for a regular therapist? And so here's what I want you to know. I have multiple clients in multiple states doing a variety of things. So I have a client recently who started a support group. And she just did this past weekend, she did a mother's retreat, and she has EMDR intensive starting as we speak. I have another client who's doing a grief group, who has a contract with a company to do mental health evaluations on the elderly in their nursing homes and assisted living. She has a day rate that she gets to bill them to go in and do as many, these evaluations as she can. I have a client who is doing a speaking engagement. I have a client who has a contract to do therapy for teenagers in a local high school. We have contracts to do EAP services for school districts and youth development nonprofits. I have done curriculum development. I have done a podcast. There's 1,000 different ways for you, who you are, to use the knowledge that you have to serve your clients more completely. So yes, it is possible, whether you want to be upfront and out in public or you want to be behind the scenes. I have people who have reached out for consulting on apps. There's a good chance that right now in your community, there is somebody that has the problem that you want to solve. They're probably like talking about it right now. The kids are having such a hard time with blank. I have so many couples in my church who are struggling for, couples counseling, and I don't feel qualified to help them with couples counseling. A lot of churches right now are referring people out, right? They have stopped doing the pastor wants to do all the counseling because the pastor realizes that people have needs beyond the scope of his practice. And so there's a lot of churches who are right now saying, we want to refer you to the therapist. We want you to go to the therapist. So what if you partnered with the church and you say, I'm willing to offer a couple support group once a month if you'll pay me $500 to come in here, and as many couples that want to come in can come in for this couple session. It's going to be a workshop. It's going to be a retreat. I'm going to do it once a month. I'm going to do it, once a quarter, however you want to structure it, right? Do you think that churches won't pay for that right now? This was my first book that I wrote. It's called Drag 'em Kicking and Screaming. And at the time I was working as a school counselor, and my sister's was a school counselor. She's also a licensed mental health counselor, and my brother-in-law was a principal, right? So we wrote this book over Thanksgiving one year, and my church bought, how many books did they buy? I'm going to say 50. I don't remember exactly how many. Whatever was a box back then. They bought 50 of these books for me to come in and teach everybody who was in children's church how to connect with children, manage behaviors, and support the development of the children's church program. That was 10 years ago. So that ebook that you wrote that nobody is buying could be selling right now. That workbook that you designed that's sitting on your desktop could be selling right now. It could be opening doors for you, but you don't have the structure for it, which is why I'm having the More Money, Less Grind sprint. I'm going to show you how to initiate these conversations, what to put in the emails, how to structure the contracts. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? But I'm going to show you what I use that works for me so that you can go out and get your own contracts, so that you can sell your own offers and you can continue to serve your clients well. It is not unethical to have a profitable practice, and it's not nearly as hard as we're making it. It's just that we've been conditioned to believe there's only one way to do it, and that is just simply not true. There are lots of ways to do it. And what I'm going to tell you is I don't see the tech pros and the VCs through their telehealth platforms doing workshops or retreats. So you can own that lane. We do the kickoff party on Sunday night. If you're in the room live, you have a chance to win one of my one-on-one sessions. The sprint itself kicks off on Monday, the 13th. If you have any questions anytime about starting, growing, or scaling your private practice, please always know that you can send me a message. I'm going to do one of two things if you send me a message. I'm either going to answer you directly or I'm going to record a video and send it to you. So you are always welcome to ask me any questions that you have. And if I think that us working together privately as a client of some format would be a good thing for you, I'll let you know about that too. But I want everyone who is helping people to make good money. That is my business. That is what I do. And I love to help people do that as well. So you guys have a great rest of your night, and I will see you soon.